Yeah, I come to show my family, actually the culture, how our forefathers used to look like and how they used to live. They were wiped out. Actually, they were wiped out.
The hunter-gatherer and the pastoralist communities didn't have armies. And because the black farming communities had trained armies, they were the superior power in the land at the time.
In 1850, there was a census in South Africa, and there were still 100,000 San, registered Bushmen or San in South Africa. 100 years later, in 1950, there were known to be 30 or 40 inside the Kalahari Park. So something had happened there, it all disappeared. And people going to school learnt about the Bushmen. I learnt about the Bushmen as a group that had died out in South Africa. I'm Roger Chennels. I'm the lawyer for the San, the Komani San. I've been involved with them for about 7 years. I met the old man, Regopstaan Kruiper, in about 1992, and he was living down at a place called Kakakama in the Cape, where he was carrying out some tourism operation together with a farmer there. And there was something of an oddity there, the last remaining Bushman. No one knew of any other Bushman in South Africa at the time. Shortly after meeting them, I knew that they wanted one thing, and that was to return to the Kalahari. Regopstaan Kruiper had a vision that his people would get their land back, which was very unusual, I think, because Bushmen for over the years had lost everything. This old man died 5 years ago, and David Kruiper is his son, not his oldest son, but he was the son who was anointed with the leadership of the clan, and is generally accepted as being the San leader.
Die Bushman was, as jy praat daar van die Drakensberge van die Kaap af.
There were Bushmen everywhere, from the Drakensberg to the Cape and further in from the Cape, everywhere. In the Karoo and the Cedarberg, you can climb as high as you like and you will find traces of the Bushman there. He was there. The rock paintings show it.
Ons is gedryf van die suide en die noorde. Ek was nie bang gewees nie.
We were driven from the south into the north, but I was not afraid to go back. I went to Parliament and demanded, not if you please, sir, I demanded to know what had come of the land that belonged to the Bushmen, as proved by the rock paintings.
Wat het geword van die grond waar die Bushmans vroeër gewees het. Ek sien dat rotstekening.
Regopstaan Kruiper and his extended family lived in the park in the 1920s. In 1931, the Kalahari Gensbok National Park was formed, not to save the Gensbok, but really to preserve the way of life of the San who were known to be living there. But game reserve legislation doesn't protect people. And in a very, very short time, a clash started developing between the rangers who were focused on saving animals and the people living inside the park who were now restricted. And the start of the eviction of the San began.
Ek het ook gedink toe ek was die park gebore in die park was die park lief.
I was born in the park. I love the park. I gained my skills there. I did courses there, not like in school. If a man wants to learn, he should come to me. I will give him knowledge of tracking. I learned everything in the park. I love the park so much, I can say, it is my park. We lost the freedoms we had before. When we were caught up in the law, which said the animals must be protected. That's when we lost our hunting rights. They also said, the Bushmen hunt too much. They are lazy and dirty, and their dogs must be shot. And word got out that we were making trouble for the park, and they decided to make a plan. And the plan was the park was only for Westerners. We must leave and find work. I want the freedom to move around as I did before, on my own, to visit our graves, nice and slowly, not in a rush in a car. Here, there, 1, 2, 3. We want to sleep overnight. We are only allowed to pay a quick visit by car.
We lived here for years and years. I can't remember how many years. I was born at Tweerivieren, under the big tree, behind the office, and I grew up here. We lived off the melons, what my father brought in from the veld. We lived off the melon and the tree berries. Noble, Vetpiet tree berries. We called it Bushman's juice.
Dat was die sap van die Bushman. O Heer, ons wil in hem weer terug.
Oh my Lord, how we wanted to go back. We were on the way back, but we were not allowed. We would dearly love to live there again, like we used to. Look, we were afraid to speak our language. We couldn't speak it. We were warned that no one wanted to hear it. Our parents could teach us our language secretly at home, but we couldn't speak it freely when we liked. We would have been dead.
Maar, skelmbies, ons kan ermee gepraat het soos ons wil. Dan moet ons dood.
In 60 jaren.
Since 1960, the farmers have moved in and own the whole area. We don't own anything. The area where we are allowed to live is too small for hunting, so that's why we don't live traditionally.
From the dust of the earth, the wonderful crowning I am talking about this morning. Hallelujah! This Jesus that lesser men made into, which we hear in the joyous worship, we crown him. That's why I want to encourage you. I greet you, Papa David. We must keep going.
Amen. Is ook bly. Die geliefdes het ons voorkeur gegee om eers maar 'n bietjie aan te gaan. Want papa's so 'n bietjie op die dienswerk uit. Maar die Here seën vir u.
Ek sal nog sê dat nou eintlik nog die reën wat hulle my gesê het nie en wat hulle vir ons nog
I cannot say that this is the actual rain which they told me about, but the rain is definitely approaching.
om te kom. Die is maar net
It is on the way.
voor bewys dit dat daar reën, die grootste reën is nog op die pad.
That is the rain which Regopstaan spoke about. It is coming from behind us.
Agter, hy is nog nie voor.
It was like this years ago, but because life has changed now, the rain also went away. And at that time people performed the rain dance. And old Mackay, my granddad, said, on the day I receive my land, we can expect things to improve. The rivers will run and we will be able to see the waters coming down again. I can say, I am a prophet. I can see far. The day I get my land back, the rain will fall and the rivers will flow.
with the far-sightedness of Regopstaan Kruiper and his son David, we started looking into the possibilities. And I must say, luck was on our side in some respects, partially with finding the research which proved the existence in the park, and partially through the entire progression of history in that Nelson Mandela was freed and we were given a constitution which smiled upon restitution of land to those who lost it. What we had to do, though, was to try and prove where the San had gone and who the San were, and also try and prove the case, because the Parks Board was saying the San never lived there, and also were denying that they had a valid claim.
Hoeveel is een necklace?
Hoeveel is een?
35 rand voor de necklaces. Elke necklace is 35, nee?
Ja, die worden
35 is
35.
50.
That's 50, that's 35. Met die horing, je is 35, nee?
Visitors come to see a national park in a natural, pristine state, not to see other people living inside the park. They talk in terms of a cultural village, which will be a bit of a window dressing exercise, because the Bushmen are such, the San people, they walk around in everyday clothes like we do, and they just use their traditional dress on special occasions. A cultural village on the peripheral of a national park, having pure traditional clothing, nothing Western, might work.
Shouldn't they just have the park, the Bushmen were living here for so long, so...
The Bushmen are not poachers, they're hunters. I mean, they take what they need, that's all. And they all live in small family groups. There's no ways they're going to deplete the wildlife for what they need. That's my personal feeling in it.
Some of the Bushmen, the San people, we're training to act as trackers. Some individuals has been operating in the park for quite a few years. They come and go. They don't see it, or some of them didn't see it as a career opportunity.
No one can tell me what is what, because I know the animals. I know the lions, the leopard, the jaguar. You must know when the lion will attack.
The Bushman is renowned for having tracking capabilities. Unfortunately, most of the San people is unschooled. Some of them can't even read and write. And that, unfortunately, excludes them from formal training courses.
Van my kant af is die storie nie vir my baie lekker nie.
My story is not very nice.
As ek nou kyk, die tydperk wat ek nou in die park is, niemand kan vir my sê...
Because the men who came in now, they always want to come and tell you, who grew up in the park, what to do and how to do it.
Maar die manne wat kom, hulle wil altyd vir jou kom vertel wat groot geword het in die park.
That is wrong.
Dit is verkeerd.
People told me that I can't obtain a senior post if I cannot read and write. I have to train them anyway. They don't know the park and they don't know the dunes.
Now, a national park in South Africa, as in most other countries, which were formed back in the old days, was to preserve pristine nature so that wealthy people usually could go there with their cameras and experience untouched nature and take beautiful photographs and go back to the city. And the idea of having people living there in any form was just totally anathema. This is a class action, and we didn't want to claim and put a list of people and find there were others who excluded. The Kruiper family and the traditional San who started the claim were obviously San. They dressed like San, they lived like San, they thought like San. Another group, which now started coming in, were much more modern people who had different ideas about what their culture meant to them. We found San who were living in suits and who had been living as other. In South Africa, one's very conscious of racial classification. And even though coloured was less advantageous than white, people chose to register coloured because it meant they could get pensions and land and that sort of thing. And no one would ever mention their names as Bushmen.
We as the San clan are one community. There are differences, but these are not insurmountable. The differences are within the community. There are people in the San who are strong farmers and they badly want to farm, and then there are people who want to live in the traditional way. Well, there is conflict between the farmers and the traditional group because the traditional group does not like the idea of cattle farming on their land. They are slightly autocratic because when they decide on something today, tomorrow they will have forgotten and then they do something else. The Bushman will never fight with you. You can forget it. If you can speak stronger and louder than he would rather not speak to you. He would rather flee from you.
Kyk ons die Kruiper familie. Our helft aan my pa die ding beginne.
Look, our Kruiper family. My father started the thing, and then I took over. And when I got on the bus to drive it, I just took everyone. Then I found out something. I wasn't the driver anymore. I was at the back of the bus.
Ek is agter in die bus. Toe sê ek nee. Ek is ek. Ek is nie soos die ander mense nie. Ons is 'n mens dan.
But I'm not like others think I am. So I decided from now on, I'll be in charge. And I will cut the cake as I see fit.
Want vir die anders. En hulle ken nie die kennis wat ek het nie.
We initially had claimed rights in the park and a residential area outside. As the numbers grew, and as we recognized that the government was not blocking us, but in fact was supporting this as symbolically the most important return of heritage in the African continent. The San were granted 6 huge farms of 40,000 hectares in extent, of which this is the first one that the San received. A portion of the south of the park, 25,000 hectares in the park, of which ownership has been granted, and then the rights in the park still have to be negotiated.
All of a sudden, we heard the rumor that the Bushmen wanted land, specifically this farm.
Wat hier vanaf van hierdie plaas op spesifiek.
They could wait no longer because they said the Bushmen are the oldest clan in the country or whatever. They were here first and they want their land. We thought we'd have to move or we would be surrounded by Bushmen. They are not territorial, they are nomads. The Bushman will not stay in one place, he will move around, over your land and everywhere.
Daar was 'n soort van 'n probleempie. Die helfte van die boere was nou nie gelukkig geweest nie omdat hulle
There was a little problem. Half of the farmers were not happy about having to part with their land, but then they were forced to. Now half of us will stay on the farms and the other half will probably live in the park. David Kruiper's group. They are seeking a stake in the park because they are not farmers. They are actually men of the wild, and that is why they will return to the park.
So where we stand now in March 2000, the land is safely in the San's control, and the negotiations for the park, which is really the heart of the claim, still remain to be done. What we are facing now, we are facing the difficulty of just managing the entire process of the community of perhaps over 1,000 people coming together, and they've been apart for 50 to 100 years, making sense of what it means to bring their language back, and deciding what to do with this land, how to incorporate their culture, how to incorporate a dying language, and then how to utilize the huge skill, which many of them have, of tracking, plant knowledge, animal knowledge, with modern tourism demands. So there now are millionaire landowners in the Kalahari, faced with huge management problems and challenges. So that's part of the dilemma we're dealing with now.
Do you remember the story when he was lying in bed and he said that you will get the land back?
The big challenge was to offer them something which would give them land of their own and which would allow them to derive an income from that land. The first challenge is to not exclude people in all areas, in all conservation areas, is to ensure that local communities, adjacent communities, have real participation in some way or other in the management of the park and the management of the resources, and that they enjoy real benefits from those resources, real ownership, if you like, and real bargaining power.
Oh, David. Anders. Waar sta je die groot waar? Wanneer is die gekomen? Nou, net nou. Ik ben vandaag gekomen. Nou, met die groot waar.
I have come today to talk to Big Boss about the land in the park.
Die grond. Rondom die grond van die park.
I think my question would be to David, what was he expecting to happen inside the park?
Die gaan van my.
My sorrow has not gone away. I need your help. We had good negotiations, but my heart lies in the park. I went away and my heart was broken. I want to go back to the park.
Live inside the park.
I was so lief op die hele natuur.
I want to live with nature. I don't want to live with sheep and goats and cattle whose tracks don't belong there.
Dat daar spore is nie, want dan is jy nie meer natuurlik nie.
You know, there are no people living within national parks. You know, the national parks in South Africa are fenced off, generally speaking, either because they are predators and things like that.
Old Regopstaan had a vision and said that the land will come back. And I also believed that the day would come and the land would come back to us. He told me I must persist. I mustn't fight or use violence. I must just negotiate for the right for our children to continue with their tradition in the park.
Om met tradisie voort mee te gaan, maar in die park.